This video is for the trend lines and correlations foldable. To put this one together, on the large dashed lines, you need to cut. Then with this top piece, you're going to fold in half on this line. So I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to fold to that line where it says tab 1. And then tab 1 you can take and you're going to fold backwards, the opposite direction. So it should look like that when you're finished. The bottom half, you're just going to fold in half. And then where you see glue tab 1 here, you're going to put just a little amount of glue. You don't need much. And then that tab 1 that we folded backwards, we're going to glue just that piece to that section. And so when you're finished, you have a booklet. And then you also need to cut out the scatter plots on the next page. So once again, this video is for the trend lines and correlations foldable. We're going to start with the definition. So a correlation is a statistical relation between two or more variables such that one variable is accompanied by systematic changes in the other. So as one changes, the other one changes. A correlation can vary from -1, which is a perfect negative correlation, through 0, which is no correlation, to a +1, which is a perfect positive correlation. So the first ones we're going to look at are the perfect correlations. So we've got a perfect positive and a perfect negative. And so what those look like, they are going to be the scatter plots that are real tightly grouped and look like if you would draw a straight line, it would go through every single point. So the perfect has a perfect positive, it's a positive slope. Perfect negative has a negative slope. Next, we have high correlations. And so high correlations are not as tightly grouped, but they're still pretty close. And so for our high positive, you can see the data is not grouped as close as it was in the perfect ones, but you can still clearly see that it's going uphill, that it's positive. And then the high negative is the same way. They're not as closely grouped, but you can still clearly see that it's negative and it's going downhill. And then we have low correlation. So in both of these examples, the data is real spread out. And so for the low positive correlation, you can see how spread out the data is. We can still tell that it's going uphill, but you can see how much further the data is spread out between these two examples. For the low negative, the same thing occurs. We're now going downhill within a negative slope, but again, you can see how spread out the data is, and it's not a perfect negative slope. We're not going downhill for every x value. Some kind of go back up and jump back up. If we flip over to the back sides, we have no correlation. And no correlation, just like no association, it looks like you took a bag of marbles and you threw it on the ground. You can't tell if it's positive, if it's negative. There's no relationship between the data. On these last two, we're going to determine the correlation of the scatter plots below. So on this first one, we can see that it's going downhill. And so that is a negative correlation. I would say it's probably a high negative. We're missing some data in here, but you can tell that they're still pretty closely grouped, and they're not big outliers like we have in that low correlation. You kind of see where you've got some data that's random in there. And then the bottom one looks like I took a bag of marbles and I threw it on the floor. I can't tell if it's going up or down, if it's positive or negative. So there's no correlation.